Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It's June the 9th. Let's talk boxing. Now, as I've said in an earlier video, I believe that Anthony Joshua is making really almost a career-ending mistake by signing up to fight Andy Ruiz again, right? It's as if in a few months, this guy is going to figure out how to handle himself defensively against a guy who knocked him down 4 times, right? Just doesn't work that way. George Foreman came out and said he doesn't feel that Anthony Joshua should fight Andy Ruiz again. Well, 2 days ago, you had another guy come out, David Price, right? Here's his quote. He said, "If I had my time again, I wouldn't have taken a rematch with Tony Thompson at all. Never mind straight away." Right? David Price lost twice, back-to-back fights, to Tony Thompson. Now, I know ego gets the best of us. I understand Joshua now wants the rematch to take place at Madison Square Garden, the same place as his personal Waterloo, his first professional defeat. To me, this is like getting in a major accident at an intersection and then saying, you know what, the next time I drive, I want to go right through that intersection again. Right? It's bad form. Understand, over time, people are going to remember you for the good things you've done down the road. Andy Ruiz, who is the heavyweight champion right now, is only one bump in your long road. Right? The people around Joshua need to tell him that his career could be badly hurt, just like David Price's was. Badly hurt if he shows up in the rematch and has no answers. Understand, Andy Ruiz did not beat him because of a lucky punch. Ruiz lands several combinations. Hurts Joshua the first time with the left hook up top. Hurts Joshua later and repeatedly, look at the film, with right hands around Joshua's guard. A center of gravity is very hard to change for a fighter, right? Just think about how you walk, your own center of gravity. Joshua in a few months is not going to learn how to lean back to have Andy's right hand cross in front of his face. Let me also point out too, in the David Price article, and again it was on boxingscene.com 2 days ago, he talks about how Joshua needed to figure out how to not box with Andy Ruiz. That when you're fighting a fast-handed shorter guy, right, you need to stick a jab in his face. In other words, you want to turn the fight into just jabs and power shots, right? Left hooks off the jab. Think Vladimir Klitschko against Ray Austin. Look up that fight here on YouTube. Or jabs setting up straight right hands. The problem is that all of us are underestimating Andy Ruiz, right? Because Ruiz doesn't walk in like this. Watch Ruiz. Ruiz comes in, his shoulders and his arms hide his face, right? So I don't believe Joshua will be able to land a jab consistently on Andy Ruiz. And the problem is, Andy is a great counterpuncher. So when you throw a jab and Andy's able to slip the jab, then Andy's coming in with combinations. And Andy is the kind of guy who's not just flashing his hand. Understand, he's throwing combinations knowing that the third punch of the combination is going to be the one he loads up on. Right? Joshua hasn't had as many professional fights as Andy Ruiz. I think we're caught up in the moment here. I know Joshua won some big fights, But I'm not sure if Joshua is as far along in his career development as Andy Ruiz. Right? As I've said before too, Andy Ruiz, before he was with Al Heyman, one of the biggest names in the sport, Ruiz fought under the banner of Bob Arum. In other words, don't just look at the fighter, look at the people behind them. Andy was on the Mexican Olympic team. This isn't a guy they picked out of the crowd who just happened to pull an upset. No, this is a guy who, as he was fighting Joshua, was in his second heavyweight championship fight. This is an advanced fighter with a skill set that Joshua, a bigger, clunkier, physically slower guy, won't be able to solve in 4 or 5 months. Right? George Foreman put it best. He said, look, you don't want to fight Andy Ruiz right away because you won't by then have figured out what you've done wrong. Let's face it too, boxing's not like cheating on an exam. I can't slip Anthony Joshua a piece of paper, have him say, oh, was I leaning into Andy's right hands? I'll just avoid doing that. Boxing's a matter of habit. It takes practice and repetition. So when the bullets start flying and Andy Ruiz sets up a right hand, you have a millisecond to decide, can I lean back? Also, when you lean back to avoid that right hand, let's say Joshua leans back to avoid that right hand, will he have practiced his balance to the point where when he leans back and the right hand swings by him, he then has the fortitude, the balance, the tools in his tool shed to be an Ali or someone, right? You know, while leaning back, throwing a jab. As he leans forward, throwing a combination. Folks, that's why guys spend months in the gym, right? To learn these skills over time. Joshua would need those skills against Andy Ruiz in the rematch. Forget what we thought before the fight. Forget the fact that Joshua was a prohibitive favorite. We now know that line was wrong. Andy Ruiz is a complicated opponent for Anthony Joshua. Right? Also, think about Joshua fights. When's the last time you saw Joshua completely keep a guy at the end of a jab for the entire fight? Right? Look at the Vladimir Klitschko-Sultan Ibragimov fight, where Klitschko does just that. As I've said before, understand, that's years into Klitschko's career. Right? Years into Klitschko's career. On TV, it looks easy. You see Errol Spence keeping Mikey Garcia at the end of a jab. Folks, that's high-level stuff. Good luck trying to do that against a guy who knows he can beat you because he's already taken your titles after knocking you down 4 times. Again, 2 days ago, there was an article on BoxingScene.com. It quotes David Price. Understand, Price, like George Foreman, big hitter. Right? When Price first runs into Tony Thompson, he has all the momentum in the world. He destroyed Audley Harrison. Right? Destroyed Audley Harrison. This is about 6 years ago. Price is in his late 20s, early 30s at the time. He's in his prime as a heavyweight. Right? Sometimes the best drivers get in car crashes. Price runs into Tony Thompson, loses. It could have been viewed as a bad night. Let's say Price or people in the crowd figured out, hey, this is structural. Tony Thompson is a tough matchup for Price. What I want people to do is to go back. Look up my own history here on this forum. You'll notice I picked Tony Thompson in that first fight against David Price. The styles didn't match up. Well, let's say Price or somebody in his corner figured out, hey, the styles didn't match up. Well, understand, if you don't fight the guy again, you have the "it was a bad night" excuse. right? You have plausible deniability. You can concede that you got beat that night, but you could say, hey, I just wasn't feeling well and stuff like that. This is while you're in the gym, feverishly working on the things that cost you in the fight against the overlooked or undervalued opponent. Right? When you fight the guy again and the guy beats you up again, you don't have excuses. Right? Fans then start focusing on your opponent. Right now, Anthony Joshua has the perfect cover. Right? And you need covers when you're in the public light, when you're dealing with fan relations. Understand, Joshua could say, hey, this is my first loss. I've been working very hard from the time I was an amateur, got the Olympic gold medal, had an unbeaten streak that took me to multiple heavyweight titles, right? I fought former multi-year heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko. I fought fellow currently reigning heavyweight champion Joseph Parker. Right? He could say, hey, I got beaten tonight. I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to work on a few things. I'm going to spend more time with family. Suffered this loss. I'm going to regroup. Right? That's all he has to say. Understand, Deontay Wilder fights Luis Ortiz next. If Wilder wins that fight, he's already contractually obligated to fight Tyson Fury. Right? Just those two fights will take us well into next year. At that point, if you're Anthony Joshua, you can start showing up ringside at these fights. Right? You can say, hey, I'm just a fan. They stick a mic in your face. You say, hey, you know, I'm taking time off from the sport. You saw what Andy did to me. I have Andy written in my long-term plans here. I'd like redemption, but I am taking time off. Have a Tyson Fury if he beats Wilder in that rematch. Or have Wilder look at you in the crowd. You know, in a crowded theater or crowded venue of 20-odd thousand people, you know they're going to seek you out. You know the press is going to seek you out. Have one of these guys call you out. As I said before the Ruiz fight, I think Joshua has a much better chance against Deontay Wilder, a guy who doesn't collapse the pocket and have a two-handed combination punching mindset of an Andy Ruiz. Right? As I said also, sometimes being shorter is better because it gives your taller, clunkier opponent less to hit. Right? And so understand, Joshua is someone people want to fight. He doesn't need to fight Andy Ruiz again to have people want to fight him, to have fans want to see him. Also understand, we all know that Joshua could be a heavyweight champion with multiple belts because he's been a heavyweight champion with multiple belts. Right? Understand, he spent years of his life without the heavyweight title. Okay, he's lost the title. I know many people are going to say, you need to get that title back. Think long term. Right? Sure, he wants to fight heavyweight champion. Sure, he wants to get the title back. You don't need to rush into it right now. You've already been there. You've already done that. Figure out when a champion has a style that's just bad for you. Right? Through YouTube, I've urged Joshua to call up George Foreman. Call up Lennox Lewis. Right? Add to that list David Price, his own countryman. Right? Fighting Ruiz in the fall is a bad idea. Right? Put your ego aside. Think about your long-term future. Joshua is still a young man by heavyweight standards. There's no urgency. Joshua is something like 10 years younger than Luis Ortiz. Think long term. The paydays have been going up over time, right? You're part of a vibrant venue, the Zone, that's picking up subscribers every day. Who knows? The money might even be bigger down the road. Right? Don't target Andy Ruiz when there are other champs who you have a better chance against. Right? Target their belts. Target Ruiz for years from now. After months in the gym where you're changing your center of gravity, you're figuring out how to deal with guys with faster hand speed than you. You improve that jab a little bit. Right? Then, when you're ready, approach him. Understand, Lennox Lewis did not fight Oliver McCall straight away. Right? Understand, there's a school of thought, and I belong to it. George Foreman said it. David Price said it. Where many people feel that you shouldn't fight him again at all. If you know his style is bad for you, why deal with it again? Let's talk about Golovkin against Steve Rolls. Now, first, let me say this. I enjoyed this fight a lot. Steve Rolls has above average defense. You know that by the fact that to hit him, to hurt him, Golovkin had to tuck shots in. Right? Rolls is not wide open, so Rolls has his hands up. Golovkin hits him right here. Right? Golovkin has to tuck the shot in. In other words, Rolls has his defense up. Golovkin splits the defense in the one place where Rolls is open. Also, you notice too, when Golovkin wanted to hit Rolls with left hooks to the body, you notice Rolls had a forearm down here. You notice that Golovkin had to tuck shots around Rolls' defensive construct. So I applaud Steve Rolls. I thought he actually presented some problems for Golovkin. Now that said, I thought Golovkin looked magnificent. I personally feel that it's malpractice, quite frankly, to name the best punchers, the best fighters in the sport, pound for pound, without naming Golovkin. Right? I don't care about, who has what belt. I don't care about curious boxing decisions by judges. Your own two eyes and this man's track record should tell you that even now at 37, Golovkin is one of the very best in the sport. Now, speaking of centers of gravity, Golovkin has a very unique center of gravity that allows him to throw punches that really can't be categorized. On the Zone, they were talking about Golovkin's left hook that hits Rolls right here. Right? Sergio Mora, who is the best thing on the Zone. Right? He's their best analyst. He's actually trying to take you through the mechanics of the fight. Very different than what the other guys are doing. Right? Mora talks about how Golovkin does something fighters are not supposed to do. Right? He crosses his legs. I mean, Golovkin's so unorthodox that the punch, which really isn't a hook, right? Because it's kind of like a hook, overhand, left hand. Mora tells you that he hits Marco Antonio Rubio with that same punch. I've watched Golovkin long enough to be able to tell you that you can figure out that Golovkin throws that same punch with both hands. Well, Mora talked about how Golovkin throws it from a southpaw stance. There's something odd with Golovkin's feet. In other words, if you're a boxing purist, Golovkin is unorthodox. This is not the way it would be taught. Now, Golovkin shuffles his feet. I really can't tell if Golovkin's trying to go southpaw. Right? What I can tell you is that a very skilled opponent like Steve Rolls sees Golovkin moving his feet, looks at the angles of the punches, has a traditional hook from Golovkin with both hands, blocked. And Golovkin comes up with an odd punch. By the way, he hits Rolls with it more than once. That somehow splits Rolls' guard and is a power shot without being a straight left or right hand. Right? It's because Golovkin is unorthodox and has prodigious power. He's one of the hardest punchers in the sport. Right? If not the hardest. That you really can't prepare for him. Which sparring partner could Rolls have gotten who would be throwing punches at that kind of angle? Right? Understand too, I admire guys who can switch back and forth. Righty, southpaw, righty, southpaw. As I like to say, the first time I saw Andre Ward fight, I couldn't figure out if he was righty or lefty. Right? I love guys who switch. The interesting thing with Golovkin is it looks clumsy. But yet somehow, even when his feet seem to be out of position, his punches have incredible power on them. Let's be clear on the feet. Let's say this is my left foot, this is my right foot. Boxers coming forward will come forward like this, right? They never want to be in a position where this foot is in front of this foot so that they're deprived of throwing punches with power. Right? Just stand up and play with your feet. If you're a righty and you have your feet inverted, you might not be able to throw certain punches with power. Right? The left hook works when the left foot is in front of the right foot. Doesn't really work that well this way. Look at Golovkin's feet in the fourth round as he finishes off Steve Rolls. Right? The guy on the telecast who picks it up is Sergio Mora. Understand, Mora beat Vernon Forrest back in the day. Right? Mora won a championship back in the day. Mora even dropped Danny Jacobs when he was a pro. He was a high-level pro. Didn't have the punching power. Certainly not the punching power of a Golovkin. But he's clearly a guy who knows how to break down fighters. Right? So Mora is obsessed with Golovkin's feet. When you watch Golovkin's feet, it's odd that Golovkin at one point seems to have this foot in front of the other foot. And he's still throwing punches with authority. What's also interesting too is he's in against an opponent who has his hands up. He hits Rolls twice with punches right here. He also is able to get around Rolls' guard to land left hooks to the body. I know Golovkin took time off from the sport. Wow, he looks sharp to me. He looks ready to me. Now, I personally feel he beat Canelo twice. Right? I'm prepared to take him in the third fight against Canelo, even though I know Canelo did do better to the body in that rematch than did Golovkin. The fighters who I feel would give him problems are the guys who are southpaw, who also have a length game going. These are the guys who know how to keep you at the end of a jab. These are the guys who know how to lean so their head isn't in range for Golovkin to hit them right here. Right? These are the guys who, because they operate behind a jab and can move, can go several rounds without giving Golovkin a chance to throw that left hook to the body. Let me name two names. Demetrius Andrade. Right? Quite frankly, I think he's more dangerous, style-wise, for Golovkin than Canelo. And at 168 pounds, another slick lefty, Billy Joe Saunders. Now, the question for both of these guys is whether they could stay on their back foot moving long enough to win by decision. In other words, that jab would have to be popping. Right? With Golovkin, you don't want to be up against the ropes. You saw how that worked out for Steve Rolls. By the way, Rolls goes out. I mean, he's out cold when he hits the canvas. I get the feeling he's knocked out. He's unconscious. You could tell just by how he lands on his side. Then the canvas wakes him up. Right? His problem is that Golovkin catches him up on the ropes. He has nowhere to go. Right? An Andrade and a Saunders have spent careers finding ways to stay away from the ropes for prolonged periods of time. Right? I believe those are big hurdles. Callum Smith is going to be in the pocket with Golovkin. Understand, too, Golovkin, hellacious body puncher. Right? Callum Smith, very long upper body. Right? I think it's more difficult for a Golovkin when an opponent is on their back foot and their body's unavailable. Right? I know Demetrius Andrade's a tall guy with a long upper body, but watch him fight. Right? I talk about bending at the waist. Right? You bend forward to hide your body. You can bend backwards if you have a jab to keep an opponent off of you. Right? To create space to hide your body. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this video. Thanks for stopping by.